So Kim and I today are talking about Thanksgiving, and I've got my
Mhm.
coffee because it's not early, but it's early-ish for when we normally record these reviews, I
Yes.
guess.
I already had my breakfast and my coffee, and I've already started cleaning, so
Super
I'm
fun,
past
super
that now.
fun. So Kim and I saw this movie Friday night,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't say it was like a packed theater, but it was pretty full, right? Like, I mean,
It was, I think I've made this observation recently. I think movie theaters are too big.
yeah,
Like, people don't go to the movies anymore as much as they did. Like, I was looking at the theater we were in, and we were, like, middle up-ish area, and, like, that was a
yep,
very crowded section. But if you look, like, down on, like, that main level and then the first few rows, there was nobody there. Like, you could probably just
yeah.
cut half a theater out and be fine.
Yeah, which I mean, that's like a whole nother discussion, but I
Yeah.
am a little bit sad about the downfall of like the people actually going to a theater, but at the same time, like I remember during COVID, I very much appreciated the fact that a lot of movies that were coming out, you could just watch them at home. Like I kind of love that, I mean, that was
Yeah.
nice,
Yes,
but
there are movies that I appreciate being able to just stream because I wouldn't go to the theater to see them, like, right
yeah,
away. But then there are movies where it's like it's part of the experience, and I do feel like for Thanksgiving, it was, just to kind of hear people's responses at times
Well,
was
did
just
you did you notice? I'm sure you did. I forgot to ask you this when we were leaving, but there was somebody sitting right behind us who was commenting on like
yes,
everything.
yes, yes, and
Which
that is part of my, like, analysis of the current slasher horror genre. Like, is it not scary anymore because of that? Because people learned how to comment on it from all of, like, the parodies and the meta horror. So now when they
yeah,
watch it, they're like they're very free, as this girl was, to be like, girl, no, you can't do that. Why are they splitting up? All this stuff. And it's like, and that takes away the suspense because you're aware that what they're doing is dumb.
right. So, and we talked about this a little bit. I don't know that there is such a thing as a scary slasher movie in the traditional sense, at least lately that I've seen. I mean,
No,
there are
and
some that are entertaining for sure, but not really scary.
right. And I was saying, like, I just watched X for the first time, and I do feel like that, and I consider that a slasher. Like, it was a person killing people, like,
Yeah,
that's slasher. And there were some scary moments in that, and I guess, like, part of it, and this is like part of Thanksgiving, is like is the who done it factor at all part of that.
yeah,
Even Michael Myers, who it's like we know who it is, but he's still wearing a mask. So it's like,
right.
do we really know who or what he is? And so does that add to it? And in movies like X, where there is no, like, you see the person doing it, does that take away some of the horror?
Well, and I think with Michael Myers, what works so well too is the actual decision of what the mask looks like. Just this idea of like a blank face, like it could be anybody. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
like that I think works. But so
Yes.
one thing I'll say about I almost say Thanksgiving every time I say this about Thanksgiving is I think what we'll do, if you're okay with this, Kim, is we'll talk a little bit about the plot, but we'll try not to spoil the reveal for people
Okay.
who haven't seen it because it's new, right? It's like new in
Yeah.
theaters. But there are
Okay.
some things we will spoil for sure, like some plot moments,
Yeah, but
just so we
okay.
can articulate like our thoughts about things. But
Yeah. No big
we can,
reveal.
but I
Cool.
think we could generally say like, oh, I did like the reveal, or I didn't like it, but maybe not say who it is, if that kind of makes
And
sense.
yeah, and there's a couple things I've been thinking about that I want to comment on that won't won't be a
Yeah.
spoiler or anything. So yeah.
Well, so I think across the board, one of our favorite scenes, just that we both thought was hysterical. I mean, I will say, I think the whole movie is funny from start to finish for the most part. Like I laugh
Yes.
pretty consistently, but like the whole opening sequence, which this whole thing is inspired by a Black Friday mishap, and I'm using that term extraordinarily loosely. It's basically a massacre,
Well,
which
and
happened.
not even Black Friday, like, it's happening on Thanksgiving, and, like, that's the
Right.
point, is that, like, the family time and the holiday time is being interrupted by consumerism.
Yeah, so it's set in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which where else could you set and you can tell that they're really trying to say this is going to be like the Thanksgiving horror movie. Like we're going to like go into every kind of Thanksgiving trope that we can to make
Yeah.
that a thing. But it's set in Plymouth at a store called Brightmart. I think it's kind of like a Walmart, Target
Yeah, right,
sort of
Mart.
thing. This local guy owns it. He's kind of a local celebrity. Everybody knows who he is. But for whatever reason, I guess because they were giving out free waffle irons on this Thursday, this it's just like a massive crowd is wanting to get in, and they kind of get stirred up into a frenzy. And once they finally get into the store, just all kinds of, and this is an Eli Roth movie, which we should say, I guess, but all kinds of gruesome Eli Roth types of things happen once they get into the store. And it was hilarious. And I think that was the most effective social commentary from the whole movie. Probably it was like that first 20 minutes.
And yes, it's fun. I think the humor is because we as people recognize how ridiculous that behavior is.
Yeah.
But the horror is that it's real, that like people really behave that way. And the way that they like create some of the gore and death in that opening sequence, some of it is comical, like when you have someone bleeding out who's still trying to get their waffle iron.
That's what I was thinking of specifically. Yeah,
like that's funny. But then there are some genuinely unsettling moments, which are supposed to be because they're setting up kind of the conflict for the film. And so it was funny, but I would say like it wasn't like, I'm trying to think, like it wasn't ridiculous. Like
it was believable to a certain extent.
Believable. Yes. It was still believable because if someone had said this happened at a Walmart or a Target or whatever, like I'd believe it.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that they're weaving in, they're starting to weave into the movie at that point is this whole idea of like you're always on social media. So somebody's basically recording the whole incident as it's happening, and likes and hearts, and I mean, just like the whole thing you see from TikTok or Instagram.
There's a lot of that, yeah, and I guess it's interesting. Like, is the commentary that social media is just as culpable for this type of behavior because we can see it and share it and you never escape it. Because I feel like that's a big part of it. Like a year passes and they're still like watching the video of this night unfolding. And it does very much feel like you can't escape. Like if you're going to be ridiculous and insane, like you will never escape that, which I appreciate because I think that's a very important lesson for people.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that opening scene, among other things, does a good job of kind of setting the tone for the movie itself. I mean, what's to follow, because it's funny and it's gross, and even the title card screen is just the word Thanksgiving and dripping blood. Like, so you kind of know what you're getting. Which, if you're going to see this film, you should know, I think, what you're getting into anyway, right? I mean, it should be a surprise. But I will say one thing that I did love about this movie is I feel like usually for a slasher or a horror film that's marketed very heavily for a general audience, it's not going to always be as gory as what we get here. I mean, there are some exceptions to that, like Saw, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I very much appreciated the fact that they did not shy away from the blood and guts.
They did not. Yes. I appreciate that also. And it makes me think, because I just happened to watch this movie the same day that I watched X and Upgrade. It was like a movie day for me. And so
all of those are good movies.
Yes, they're all very, very good movies and very gory movies. And so, but I would say that movies like Upgrade and X are targeted at a very specific audience. And I agree, Thanksgiving is more of a general audience, but it's still very bloody. And I know, like, we talked about that with, like, I think Megan and some of these movies were like, oh, I thought it would be gorier, and it wasn't because of kind of that mass appeal it was trying to have. So I do appreciate they did not hold back. There were some very creative kills, which I always enjoy in a movie.
Very Thanksgiving themed kills, right? Like again, I would say minor spoilers, because one of these is actually in the trailer, but the whole corn cob holder thing, like puncturing somebody's eardrums with that, you know.
And I was very excited for that. So I'm glad that it was there.
As I told you, I was really waiting for some kind of, but again, I guess the killer never really speaks until closer to the end of the movie, but I was hoping for some kind of one-liner that had to do with corn or something like that.
I know.
Just to really put it over the top, but I guess that would have, hey, what's up, dude?
Go ask Dada.
Where is he?
Where do you think he's in the kitchen?
Daddy.
Just open your eyes and look, and you'll find things. It's like crazy.
Kids they struggle with that. So mine are going to struggle with that same thing today. When they wake up, mine are still sleeping, which is crazy, but they'll sleep. I know that you're like, great, that's awesome. They'll probably sleep until like 10 or 11 or something like that, because that's what they do now. But one day, Kim,
eventually
he's going to be there. So yeah, I mean, the kills were super creative. So I guess just kind of backtracking a little bit, and again, not getting too deep into the plot, but basically, this is a super self-aware slasher movie where it sets up. We've got this group of high school students that we're going to follow basically throughout the movie. You've
Which, can I
got
comment real quick?
yeah,
Definitely didn't think they were in high school. Like the way
oh
that
no,
they're presented, even in like the opening, like I thought they were college students.
yeah,
The way that they were presented and interacting, I did not get the sense that they were in high school. And it doesn't matter for the plot, but like,
and
I guess,
they don't look age-wise like they're in high school for sure. I
well,
mean,
nobody does anymore. Like
yeah.
I can get over that, but just the way that they were written to me didn't feel like they were in high school. And maybe that was to avoid over sort of caricaturizing these characters, and that's fine. But I was definitely confused for a little while when it was like, oh, they were in high school. I thought they were in college. Okay, this is just good information to have.
Yeah, and I didn't. So there's one character named Bobby who, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but Bobby's a baseball player.
I think
And
he is in college. He
I
might
was
be
about to
the
say, this
one
is
who
what
is.
I was a little bit confused about this. So maybe he was like a year older than them and he graduated a year ahead of them or something like that, maybe.
Yeah. And then there's a comment later that somebody gives to one, like, oh, you only one more year until you have to go to college. So she's a junior now, which means she was a sophomore before, which means she was a sophomore when her boyfriend was in college, which is like fine, but maybe illegal. And so I again, not affecting the plot at all. It was just a little confusing for me.
That was a little confusing. And I'm sure when Eli Roth and whoever was helping shape the script were kind of refining it, that wasn't really like a primary, excuse me, consideration. But still, it was a little weird. It was a little funky. But anyway, it's kind of the usual. Like you've got a couple of jocks, but you didn't really actually have like a nerd. Well, I guess there kind of was the one kid that was up with papers, like that kind of thing. But he wasn't really like
Yeah.
the nerdy kid per se, exactly.
And I guess in some way I don't mind that they didn't try to cover the scope of stereotypes, because then it does almost feel like you're playing into it. Like this group of fat friends felt very natural, like the jocks and the whatever, like the hot girls. I don't know, is that how people get separated these days? Like
I have no
it
idea.
felt it felt like they would all be friends. And then when you do sort of reference other people in the group coming in later, it made sense that they felt like outsiders. But I will say, it never felt too stereotyped in comparison to the other characters. Everybody felt very natural in their role.
Yeah, and I thought the lead actress, whose name escapes me, I'm actually pulling this up right now, which I meant to do prior to us beginning this discussion, but that would be, let's see, who is it? Jessica? Is Jessica the one that's the
Yes.
main? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought she was fine. I mean, like she felt very
Yeah.
like, excuse me, very nondescript. Like there wasn't really anything super distinct about her as a
Yes.
person that kind of stood out. I mean, she was supposed to be the level-headed, one to doing the right thing kind of character, I guess, but nothing really jumped out to me as like,
Yeah, she
you
wasn't
know, when
like
you
a
think about
Jennifer Love Hewitt, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, who was like, we've got to go to the police. Like she was, and
right,
again, maybe that's intentional, because then you're not creating such clear sort of lines about who these people are, which I'm okay with. But nondescript is a good way to describe her.
yeah, the irony there, nondescript is a good way to describe her, but it is, but it's true, right? So,
It is.
so you know, I think they do a good job of kind of putting the pieces in place for what's going to come a little bit later.
Yeah.
And for that, you know, from the beginning forward, you know, and again, it's a year after the massacre, and so clearly somebody is super miffed about what happened a year before that
Yeah.
at the thing, and so they're starting to realize, okay, somebody was involved with that situation, and they want revenge because of. And there's a few things you kind of find out in the opening sequence, or you have some ideas about like why they would be upset about the characters.
Yeah, they definitely set up, I think, legitimate suspects.
Right.
People who were injured or lost someone, or like, why, not just because they're mad about this, but like they had a personal investment in what happened. And so I think they set that up well, but I will also say, and maybe that's why slasher films just can't be scary anymore. Like we know what to look for. So like the more you set something up, the more we know that's not what it's gonna be.
Well, and again, without spoiling it, and I know I'm jumping way ahead here. So I was able to, and it was just a guess. And I'm usually not great at figuring out like who the killer is like early on. That's not usually a skill of mine with these types of movies, but I had a good sense of who I thought it was going to be early on, and I ended up being right, which is, and I don't know if that's an indictment of how well they kind of, or not, how well they sort of tried to make the audience think about
and
that. Or
I didn't.
whatever.
I did not come to, because I did figure it out, or at least guess, and was correct, but it was much later. Like I had a front runner in my mind, and then based on the story, I was like, okay, never mind. I don't think it's them. I do think it's this person. But for me, it was later on. It was probably at the beginning of the third act is when I was like, oh, I think it's this person.
Well, and I think I told you the only reason I was correct is just because there was a visual cue that kind of jumped out at me. So that was it. I mean, it wasn't like I deduced it based on, I mean, it could have been.
And I would be so curious to talk to Eli Roth, because it's like, were you intentional about that? Like, did you do it for the people like you who would catch it? And now I caught the cinematic reference, but to me, I didn't connect it like this might be an indication. And so I am just curious from his directorial perspective, like, was that intentional, or was it a reference without intention? Okay, those are words that I'm trying to say without giving it away.
So Kim, here's what I want us to do. I want us to give kind of our overall thoughts and recommendation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little thing here once I edit this and post it. This says like very minor spoilers coming ahead about some of the kills that we liked without, again, revealing the ending. But so just overall, how would you rate this? I mean, obviously not giving it a number or anything like that, but just whatever,
So we threw out some words, kind of, you were like, oh, it's going to be awesome. And I was like, calibrate your expectations. And then at the end, you still said that you thought it was awesome. And I said it was adequate. And that's how I would describe the movie, is it was adequate. I enjoyed it.
After ruminating on it a bit, if you had changed with that, but that's kind of where you're still
are with it. I really settled into it. And it's like a movie that, like, and I've told Matt, like, I'd love to watch it again with him. I would watch this movie again for sure. And I could probably watch it like every Thanksgiving, but there are movies, like horror movies, that like are my desert island movies I could watch every day for the rest of my life. And this is not one of them, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I have been thinking a lot about Thanksgiving horror. Like, what could they have done? Like, am I being too harsh? Because I don't think they could have done, like, I was like, what else could we do in a Thanksgiving horror? Oh, maybe it's a pissed off ghost, the ghost.
So you go the supernatural route, like.
But that's been done. And so, in a lot of different forms, that's been done. Like, there's a whole Buffy episode about Thanksgiving and like desecrating the artifacts of indigenous people. So like, it's been done. So I'm like, okay, so you probably can't go the ghost route. And I'm like, so if you want to go with a slasher, what would be the motivation? And I feel like this is the only option. I think it was a legitimate conflict and approach. My criticisms come from, I think, a little bit of the story. I do think there are a lot of characters. And some of them who get set up as like possible suspects kind of disappear for a while. And there was like a whole chunk of the movie where I'm like, so if I'm supposed to think that it's them, or if it is them, where are they? Like, they're not. I feel like you've set them up and then we just ignored them. And the other thing I felt was a little bit of a criticism was the pacing. I thought there were some moments where like a chase sort of started and it was very compelling, but I felt like it was a lot of like, oh, we're chasing, and then we're going to take some time. And oh, we're chasing, and then we're going to take some time. And oh, we're chasing, and then we're going to take some time. And I'm just like, I guess I like the slow build and then bam, third act massacre. But and it was spread out, which isn't a bad thing, but for me, it felt very like slam on the brakes, go fast, slam on the brakes, go fast, slam on the brakes. And I was like, I'm getting whiplash.
So Yeah, and I don't disagree with a lot of that, honestly. So yeah, like so we're going into it, I was like, "Okay, you're gonna think this is awesome," and you were like, "Just stop, like just
Don't have
recalibrate,
high
whatever."
expectations. That's how you get your hopes
And it
burned.
ended, and honestly, I still did think it was pretty awesome. Like, and I thought about it a little bit, because I think like you, I don't really know what else they could have done to make a great Thanksgiving horror movie, which is maybe to say that there's only so much you can squeeze out of that as a concept. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I think they handled it pretty well because they leaned into so many Thanksgiving tropes, right? Like the killer being the pilgrim and everybody in the town has these pilgrim masks because for whatever reason they're handing them out to everybody. I guess there's a parade okay, so that's something I'll talk about in a minute. Is one of my favorite
Okay.
scenes, the parade, which I did
Oh,
love.
the parade. Now, and I will say, as far as setting up like the John Carver, that's the name of this famous pilgrim, I think who founded, whatever it is.
Right,
I wish that had been introduced somehow in the opening sequence, because if this is something this town does every year for Thanksgiving, I would have liked that established instead of now that we're ready to kill a whole bunch of people, we're going to introduce it. Like, I think it would have
right.
felt a little more motivated had it been introduced in the opening sequence, which still takes place on Thanksgiving, just a
Mhm.
year earlier. So that I think would have helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think if I have any major criticism, and I don't even know if I'd say it's a major criticism, but I didn't particularly, I feel like there were some missed opportunities at the very end, like the very, very end. And we can talk about that again, without saying who the killer is and kind of the spoilery section. But
Mhm.
95% of the movie I thought was pretty much what comparable to what I would have done. Like if somebody said, okay, I want you to write like a slasher Thanksgiving horror movie, I would have hit some of those same beats probably.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. Again, I like that it didn't try to squeeze itself into like a PG-13 rating at all, right? I mean, I like that it
no,
went hard R, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
and I do think that it's one that I'll watch pretty much every Thanksgiving for better or worse. And
yeah.
it's not going to be on the same level as Halloween, but I feel like we finally have like a pretty solid Thanksgiving horror movie to kind of come
I mean,
back
we
to.
definitely do. It's not a movie where you could be like, "Well, it kind of fits," and so maybe, like, I feel like we have very clear Valentine's Day, obviously Halloween. Like, you could even make a case that I Know What You Did Last Summer is a 4th of July horror movie
Hmm,
because that's when all
yeah.
of that takes place. So I do, yeah, it is a Thanksgiving horror film for sure. Yes.
And we are totally going to write an Easter horror film of some kind. I don't know what it's going to be. I just feel like there's got to be something there, and it's got to be like,
I mean, I do really want someone to find an Easter egg that has like a severed finger in it.
I think it's
That's
got to be like a disgruntled. I mean, not Michael Myers, 'cause that's dumb, but like a disgruntled person who used to dress up in a mall as an Easter bunny, and he's wearing the outfit or something like that. I mean, I don't. There's got to be something that we could do with that,
oh,
maybe.
there's so many. There is. There's so many,
Yeah,
many, many. I mean, no, okay, never mind. I'm not gonna say this online. Never mind.
we gotta hop to it, Kim.
Wahahaha. We
Sorry,
do,
somebody's walking by outside, and my dogs are
of
like
course.
losing their minds over that.
Alerts.
Anyway, okay.
Stranger danger.
So now we're entering what I would say are spoilers, but not the giant spoiler of the ending. And all I wanted to do, Kim, was just talk about the kills that you really like, because I think there are a lot to choose from with this movie. So I don't know. Did anything stand out for you?
So I think the one that stood out the most is the woman who becomes the turkey centerpiece.
Yeah, I love that they went there.
And
Honestly,
honestly,
like,
for me, that was like, so I think I told you this after the movie. It felt, maybe I didn't tell you,
oh
it
yeah,
felt very, I Know What You Did Last Summer meets House of a Thousand Corpses meets Texas
sorry,
Chainsaw Massacre.
Leia. Sorry,
Yeah,
she
what
sees
are
the
you doing?
she sees a
Girl,
dog walking down the street, and that's unacceptable, Kim. That
it
can't
is so
clearly cannot have.
unacceptable. Get him,
Stop.
Leia, get him. No, don't
She's
stop.
wagging her tail at me. Stop.
But I
Go
felt
ahead. Sorry.
especially that sequence where the baked lady is revealed felt
The baked lady. I love it.
felt very like Texas Chainsaw House of a Thousand Corpses. Like,
Yeah, and I love the
and
little detail of the thing that tells you when it's done. The poop
oh
little
my
pop.
God. I was like, of course. And like for me as a viewer and as a human, I I love gore and blood and death. I do. I am so unsettled by things that feel so real. And
Yeah.
being like baked alive to me is viscerally upsetting
Yeah.
because there's no control and you just know it's going to happen. And like
Mhm.
that to me was the most disturbing in a good way death
Right.
of the movie. And then to serve her up to everyone.
Well, and that to me was the most legit Eli Roth moment in the movie, right? When you think about things like, he did Hostel, right? Like you think about
Yes.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, like
Yes.
I was about to say that part where he basically has her posed like a turkey on the table, and he
Yes.
like uses the carver to cut off a slice of her thigh, and it's like, oh, here. But there's a kind of a Hannibal Lecter sort of vibe initially to that, but obviously he's crazy dude. But anyway, yeah, that was super cool. What other kills stood out for you as just like noteworthy, if any, at all?
I'm trying to think. I liked the waitress one. I
Yeah.
thought that one that's
You were talking
fine.
about the person in the diner, right?
Yeah, I liked that. Well, again, because I like things that upset me, and it's like skin being frozen and stuff.
Yeah.
Then I felt like the guy in the school auditorium. That one,
Yeah.
his was so quick
Yeah.
that I'm
The
thinking,
trampoline situation.
well, right before the
Oh, right,
trampoline,
right,
he
right.
hit his
Yeah.
head, and also like he's not Jason. Like,
Right, right. So
how do
he did have like
you?
super strength.
Yeah, how do you full on like 360 a person, or I guess 180? I don't even know a person's head.
Right. Well, and then there's the whole scene with the guy in the apartment where he basically pulls his head off with the wire. Like he's just kind of like
And at
that
least
takes a
like
lot.
that one, you had a wire, like you know what I mean, with enough force. Okay, fine.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, the kitty cat, like that's
Yeah.
it was yeah.
Yeah.
There were some nice moments as well.
So for me, it would have been the turkey situation. I thought the scene in the parade where the front of the ship goes to the back of the car
Oh
and
my god, yeah,
like
like yeah,
that was very Final Destination
very
ish.
Final
Kind of.
Destination.
I kept thinking about that. I'm trying to think what other ones. Oh yeah, the corn one that we mentioned earlier, and then like the buzzsaw that it was just spraying stuff everywhere. Which the thing
Yeah.
about that, which this is such a stupid little detail, but most modern buzzsaws, as I understand it, they have a thing on which
Yeah.
detects if a human is nearby and they just stop, right?
Yes.
Like as like a protection thing. So unless it was
Yeah.
just super old, I guess it wouldn't have done that, but I don't know.
Yes. I mean, yeah, because that's why I quit doing tech in theater because I was afraid of the saws. And there was still blood on the saw in the tech shop from the student who cut off his finger. And so I was like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
and
little
I
much.
will say I did like the meat cleaver death around the
Which one
table
was
because it
that?
was sudden. When he's filming, when they're getting filmed,
Oh yeah. Like
and they're
in the
all at
around the
that
table.
table. Yeah,
It
because
was
for
like a
me,
mallet, right? Wasn't it like a
it was
mallet?
like one of those, like, yeah,
Like a tenderizer kind of
yeah, the
thing?
meat tenderizer thing. Because
Yeah,
for me, it felt very like I did not expect it. I thought,
yeah,
which I appreciate. Like to me, it upped the stakes in that moment of, oh my gosh, like anybody could go out now, which is great, you know?
yeah, yeah. So, and I kinda asked you toward the end if you felt like it was basically Scream set at Thanksgiving, but you had some other movies that kinda stood out for you as like
I did not feel like it was Scream, to be honest. It just did not have that vibe. That's why for me, it was absolutely I Know What You Did Last Summer meets My Bloody Valentine meets At the House of a Thousand Corpses meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those are the
okay.
movies.
And the last well, I've seen all of those except for House of a Thousand Corpses. Just again, because I'm not a big Rob Zombie guy, like,
And for me, it was House of a Thousand Corpses in that scene around the table.
okay. Yeah.
And like that's where it really took that on for me.
Yeah. So I guess ultimately, are we recommending that people who enjoy horror go see this as a Thanksgiving
Yes.
delicacy that, that they
Yes.
enjoy?
Yes. As an appetizer to your main Thanksgiving entree, you should go see
Yeah,
Thanksgiving the movie.
it was honestly in some ways better than I thought it would be. Just
It
because
was, because it could have gone a lot worse.
it could have been a much softer movie to try and appeal to a larger audience. Like I just didn't expect it to be as gory as it was, which I kind of appreciated in the
Oh,
moment,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Thanksgiving. And Kim, I don't know, do we have any other movies on our docket for the not too far away future?
I don't.
Maybe there's a Christmas. Look, and we're coming up on 1 year of having done this because we did.
I
Our
know.
first review was Christmas Bloody Christmas. So maybe there is another Christmas horror movie that's
I'm
there's got
sure.
a new one
Well, I
coming
mean,
out.
there's always Black Christmas, which I've seen.
I don't think I've seen that.
There's the original and there's the remake, and I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I've seen both. But I'd be curious what other Christmas movies are out there. I don't, I know there's probably something obscure. I'd love to find something obscure.
We'll do some Googling. Maybe there'll be like a indie Christmas horror movie that would be cool to check out. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We can see what's out there.
I feel like I watched one once, like that I rented from Blockbuster with my friends in like middle school. That was some B-rated, real bad Christmas horror movie.
See, don't you? And this is a total tangent, but don't you miss Blockbuster? Like I used to love.
I really miss Blockbuster. Yeah. I loved Blockbuster.
This is making me feel a little bit old, but I don't know. Like it's funny, like talking to my kids about it. They're like, "So you go there and you just pick a tape and you take it home?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's basically what you do." Like, and that's your movie, like good or bad. That's what you're watching.
Yeah, and if you didn't like it, like that's too. And like, but it was also a really nice way to find obscure or sort of B-rated movies. Like, yes, now I know you can click through all these streaming services, but it's also so easy to skip a movie. Just click
that's what I was going to say, right? It's not like now where if something's bad, you can just watch it for 5 minutes, just be like, I'm not going to finish, and just go watch something else.
Yeah, like there were a lot of movies like Session 9 and Addict Expeditions that we found because they were there in like the horror section of Blockbuster, and we were like, oh, this looks weird. No, like let's rent this. And then it became part of our like canon in high school of horror movies that we would like watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're probably movies nobody else has ever seen.
Well, you never know, right? But you're right. Like that was the cool thing about Blockbuster is like I would usually go to get, and actually in my town there was a really small little video store called K&L, but there was a Blockbuster in the next larger town that I would sometimes go to. But it was like I would always go to get the big budget movie, and it would inevitably not be available. So then I'd have to find something else to watch, right? And then it was, you find things that way. But anyway, okay, so we'll maybe review some kind of holiday themed thing soon, potentially. But
yes.
Thanksgiving, serving up all kinds of awesome horror goodness. Kim, you love the puns, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we will be back soon.